and welcome to the Love How Deep podcast with Bryon and Heather Mayer. Our purpose is to equip married couples like you with resources that rely on the transformative power of God's Word to strengthen your relationship.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again. We are looking forward to another great episode of our podcast. And I don't know about you, but I'm so looking forward to this one because we have some special guests on.
I know I'm excited for our guests to be here because they're more than guests. They're friends.
That's right.
They're friends.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about really how to stay connected as a couple, especially through life's big transitions. And I think if you've been a couple for any length of time, like we have, you probably have gone through some stuff. And I know you and I have gone through some things, some moves and
Job changes,
some illnesses,
joblessness.
joblessness, car accidents.
Yeah.
So I definitely think the guests that we have on today, we're going to learn a lot from them because they have been through a lot. They are friends. We've known them for several years, and they have certainly been through a lot. And we're looking forward to hearing all about the things that they did right, maybe some of the things that they didn't do right. Again, how they stayed connected as a couple, how they stayed connected to God,
what they learned from it,
yes.
all those good things.
Yes. Do you want me to introduce this couple?
Yep.
So, all right. So we are getting ready to welcome Bryon and Alisha Mitchell. They are friends of ours. They've been friends of ours for several years. I remember the one thing that we did together, we went through with the Freedom Group, I think a couple of years ago with them. And that was a really powerful experience. And I think just helped kind of solidify our friendship with them. And since then, our church has opened up a satellite location or another campus, and they're the worship pastors there, so to speak. Yes. And we serve right along with them. And so without further ado, Bryon and Alisha, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys.
We're super excited to be here. We love y'all.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. And like I said, when we thought about this episode and this subject, we immediately thought of the two of you because you have been through some stuff.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah.
And you've been together for a really, really long time too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But just so many changes that have happened in the time that you've been married too. Like it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And how long have you been married?
It'll be 10 years in September.
Okay. 10 years. You've had a lot of change in 10 years.
Yeah. And it's good to hear like validation that people realize we've had a lot of change. Because sometimes we're like, wow, we look back and we're like, wow, there has been a lot in these years. And
there has.
Like we say like even just moves. We've moved 7 times in 9 years. And
wow.
Like we're like, don't do that.
Don't recommend that to anybody.
No, not at all.
Ever.
And these changes, they can tear you down like maritally and spiritually, or they can build you up. And it's like, how do you cling to God and to each other during these things? And you're still here almost 10 years later and just looking like you're doing great and you're serving in the ministry together. And yeah, it's amazing. I think it's testimony.
Thanks.
Yeah. And before we jump into some of these big transitions and changes, if you wanted to just take a minute or two and just talk a little bit about yourselves and whatever details you find might be important for our listeners to know, have at it.
Okay. Well, let's see. We're Bryon and Alisha. I'm Alisha, obviously. He's Bryon. And we are high school sweethearts. So we've technically been together, which my parents will fight this number because they fought everything in for us not to be together so young, but we've been together since we were 14 and 15. And I count that as a relationship because we've been working on our relationship since we were 14 and 15 and growing up together and all of the things. Obviously that's looked different in every season, but what is that? Like 19 years this year? Yeah. Because we were together for 9 years total before we got married. So
Wow.
So almost 2 decades. I'll be turning 33 in a few months and he just turned 34. So most of our lives have been together. Wow. And let's see, I don't know what else we say. We are worship leaders. You already know that. But we moved away back in 2016 to Virginia Beach and were worship pastors there for a few years. We were part of two different churches there and ended up being there for 5 years and moved back to our hometown.
Yep.
And so even that transition, I know we'll talk about all of that, but like coming back to your hometown is crazy.
That's
That was nuts.
it is, and it's like, and it's just not like what you expect it to be.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know, but
Yeah.
not. Yeah, it's been good, but it's been just weird sometimes. I guess.
Yeah. But on the lighter end of things, we are really good friends, I would say. We have two dogs we're obsessed with, and we're crazy lovers of labs.
Oh yes.
We have Gibson, who we've had since we were in Virginia Beach, and he's 7.5.
Oh yeah, almost 8. Yeah.
And then we just got one that it was supposed to be a service dog, didn't pass his test because he's afraid of
Aw.
vacuum. And so I named him Hoover.
Ironically, named
I
him
love it.
And
terrified of the vacuum.
surprised Bryan with him when he was out of town.
I
think I
saw
heard
that
about that.
video. That was
Yeah.
so precious.
Yeah. And thing about my husband is that everyone was that day I was telling everyone he's gonna come home to a new puppy, and they're all like, he is going to leave you. Like that's what they're saying. And a thing about, and I just said, nope, you don't know him. You don't know him like I know him. He is gonna be so happy. And we are not very practical people.
Not
like
always. Not always.
just the kind of people, if you hand us a puppy, we'll probably make it work.
We're just going to figure out how to keep it forever and make it work. So the more we can, the more we'll just have to figure out.
Right. Well, I'm glad you avoided a big life transition, as in divorce.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
from that, so, yeah.
I know. I was like, no, we're fine.
Yeah, no, I was like, why did everyone think I was gonna be mad? Like you got another puppy? Like what's wrong with that? That's like the best case scenario.
Mhm.
You go out of town more often.
Yeah.
And then I come back on a dog. All right, cool.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Well, I know the dogs, aka your kiddos, are in another room, and so
Yes.
they're sounds
Yeah.
like they're being quiet for
if you
now.
hear any noises, it's them.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
One of them is on the other side of the house behind another closed door because he may start whining at some point.
because he's
So,
dramatic.
Gotcha.
But
little
it's
Oh
dramatic.
my goodness.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
okay.
Yep.
But yeah, that's there's a million other details we could go
Yeah.
into.
Sure.
I don't know if you ever talk about the Enneagram on this podcast, but we're
We love it. I don't know that we've ever mentioned it, but yes.
yeah,
What are-
Bryan's a 9 peacemaker,
Yeah.
and so you'll hear him probably less loudly than you'll hear me, and I'll
Mhm.
I'll try really hard to not fill in all of the space so he has something to share, because when he talks it's really special and he has wisdom to share. So
Right.
we will make room for him. And I'm 4, and which just means that I'm the individualist. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yes.
And truthfully, I just have a lot of feelings about everything and
Everything.
Okay.
passionate about
Right.
it. So,
Wow.
so that's why I fill spaces.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it was really a joke. Like we'd wake up in the morning. We had a joke one time because it was like we'd wake up in the morning and I'd wake up and she'd immediately be like, reading some article or something, and she'd be like, "Oh my gosh, did you see this?" And I'm like waking up and I'm like, "What?" And so like, I'm like, "So what are we passionate about today?"
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like, gotta be passionate about something. And I'm always like, can't we just like wake up and have coffee and not think
Right.
about anything for
Right.
a while?
We're kind of the
Let's ease
opposite
into
end of the
this.
spectrum. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
the opposite end of the spectrum on that, where I'm like, how can you think nothing?
Hmm.
I don't want to think something all the time.
Right. Well, Bryan, I have to say, Bryan, we get you because on this side of the microphones, you have a 9 and Heather,
Yep. I'm a 9.
and I'm a 6, but a
There's a
9
connection,
solid.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
6 is right underneath my 9. So
we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
we can overpower Alicia on this interview.
I know.
Yeah.
We and Bryan thought he was a 6 for a whole year. So
I did actually. I
we
did think I was
relate
like,
to all of those
which is
things.
funny.
Oh, okay. That's right. I
That's
remember that a couple
hilarious.
years ago. We talked about that. Yeah, and I thought you were 6. So
Yeah, that's
But,
yeah. I thought it was for the first little while because when I first like kind of took the test, I like was in like an unhealthy spot. So I know that 9s and unhealth go to 6.
right.
And so for
Yeah.
a while, then like I remember like hearing like a podcast or something of someone who was a 9, and I was just like, it's like someone's like explaining my soul to me right now. And I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
"Odd."
right.
And I
Yeah.
started looking into it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, no, this is me!" And like, and I realized why I thought I was a six.
Yeah.
But I was like, "Oh, okay," and it just like made way. And then I started saying all the things about sixes that I was like, "That's definitely not me." So
Okay.
I was
All
like, "Wow,
right.
that's literally verbatim my life." I was like, "This is really weird." So, yep,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, when it comes to transitions, I know nines typically struggle, I think, with with
yeah,
transitions and
yeah.
doing new things. And I don't know what fours are like, but
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like I'm both. It depends on what it is. It's funny. Before we moved to Virginia Beach, like there are people that would have said about me, Alicia hates change. Like
Yeah.
they would have been like, she hates change.
But, well, yeah,
And I did, and I really didn't know. I really had only had like negative changes, I think, to like compare to in the past at that time. And so, especially moving away from like my hometown and like all my people and my family, like I was terrified of doing that. And then
Mm.
something that really changed me, where I feel like I became the one who's a lot less afraid of change. Well, not a lot less, sometimes. It depends
that's
what
what
it
it
is.
is. Yeah,
Yeah, that makes
How
sense.
I feel about it.
yeah, there,
Yeah. But I'm more adventurous now
yeah. That's true.
okay.
because we survived. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah.
did. You've survived a
Yeah.
lot.
We
Yeah.
survived. Exactly. So anyway, that's us in a,
Okay.
well, I
All
don't know if that
right.
was a short version, but
Yeah. No, that's good.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, do you want to tell us a little bit about if you want to pick a transition in your life? It could be maybe the first big one you went through, or just one that pops up on you, and we'll chat through that a little bit. Tell us how that went for you.
Yeah. Well, like the big obvious one already mentioned, moving away from here to go to Virginia Beach. That was like, first of all, that was what, 7.5, almost 8 years ago? 8 years ago.
Yeah, because we were like year
Yeah.
two of Mir. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Not even year two. So maybe 8.5 years ago. That's crazy. Anyway, but time flies.
Yeah, it's wild.
I feel like that feels like yesterday sometimes.
Yeah.
But I don't know, we were really like scared to make that move, and we kind of sought counsel from like our mentors, and kind of asked, we basically expected them to say, no, don't move, stay.
Yep.
And they didn't. They were like, well, it seems like God's calling you to this. And we were like, wait, okay. And,
That's not what you were supposed to say.
and so we went, and without getting into all the nitty-gritty details, we had a couple years of just like pretty intense like church hurt and spiritual abuse, and
Mm.
um like kind of an ups and downs, I don't know, craziness.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really, like, throughout all of that, we had multiple moves too. We were,
Yeah.
we bought our first house, we changed jobs a couple times, we were in ministry part-time, and then one of us wasn't, and then we were both, but one of us wasn't getting paid for it. It was like very like,
It was
um
all over the place.
it was a lot of change.
Yeah.
But one thing that I love about that we did that, and something I recommend to every couple now, is at least for a season, move away from your hometown.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's because Bryan and I didn't go away to college, so we didn't have like that experience of like uprooting and starting somewhere new. And so this was our first time doing that. And so we really got to like figure out what it meant to build community from nothing. Like, we went there and we knew two people,
Literally.
and
Wow.
those people had multiple children, and like, we weren't going to just be with them all the time.
Yep.
And also we went there to be worship pastors, and so our focus was to grow a team and to create and cultivate like a group of people we can pour into. And so it was really intentional community building of like, we have no one. And it quickly filled all of our time of like, small groups on certain nights, practices on certain nights, all kinds of things that we had going on. But even in the midst of all of that, like church stuff, we built some really awesome relationships and built some really awesome lasting relationships. And then in the course of all of that, like when we left that church, we lost all of those relationships for a season. And then after a little while, like little people have come back and we stay in touch with a lot of people. And there's certain people that we're like connected to forever. Um, but it just really built a lot in us to like go somewhere that was separate from, oh, I know you, you're so and so's kid, or I know you, I knew you when you were a baby, or, to go somewhere where you're totally unknown and kind of be like, oh, I'm an adult here and I'm like we're creating our own life,
Yeah.
Right. That's what I was thinking. It sounds like you kind of found your identity
Yeah.
and away from being someone else's kid or family
Yep.
member and that sort of thing. And it's like, oh, it's not your parents' church that you're going to. You're going to your own church and
Yep.
you're building your own life together as a
Yeah.
couple too, because you were newlyweds.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, but just finding your own identity and who you are, I think
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah. And we were very naive about a lot of things because we were kids basically.
Yeah. I mean, we were
Yeah.
barely adults.
And so there's a lot of things that we had to learn the hard way. And it's funny, the people that we went to before we moved and like to seek their advice and everything, the phrasing they had said was like, there's just you're prepared for this as far as ministry roles are like you're prepared as you can possibly be, and other things are just on the job learning. Like other things are just you're not going to learn until you learn the hard way because that's how things go. And in hindsight, we're like, yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
But
it kind
yeah,
of reminds me of when Jesus sent the disciples out. Didn't he send them out two by two, and they weren't supposed to take a whole lot with them, and they
yeah,
just kind of landed in these towns and probably didn't know what they were doing and
Yep.
didn't know a lot of times what they needed to say, but they had to figure it out.
yeah,
That's very true.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that makes me think of, I think that's the same place where he probably said, if they don't accept you, shake the dust from your feet. I love that.
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that part. So that's good too.
Yeah.
Demon
right.
stuff and all that.
Now, do you feel like you were doing anything sort of unhealthy, and kind of coping through all of this, either as a couple or individually? And obviously, you can go into as little or as much detail as you want.
Well, that whole season, I feel like I'm viewing it as like 6 different mini seasons,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was so much that happened. But, I don't know if you want to talk about like panic attacks and anxiety and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Like
Hmm.
yeah, you can.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, yeah, one thing that kind of, so actually, like before we moved, technically, it was before we moved to Virginia Beach, I had dealt with panic attacks for a season. Um, and like they kind of actually like, so then I went to counseling actually, and then actually I ended up getting kind of like under control. Like they went away, like to the point where like I would like, it sounds funny, but I got them so under like control that like I would like felt like I was really like kind of healed of them, that like I would like try to make myself have a panic attack,
Hmm.
and I couldn't do it.
Hmm.
And so I was like, oh, well, I'm healed, because like I literally like I would try to do things that would like trigger it and nothing would happen. And I was like, this is great. This is awesome. And then like moving to Virginia Beach, they kind of resurfaced, and just like a season of stress coming through in my life. And then they just got worse out there. So that was a tough thing to deal with. And I think, and it was hard because at first, I don't think she really understood
Yeah, I didn't.
what a panic attack was, or kind of like, I think at first she was kind of like, oh, you just suck it up, And it's
Sounds
like,
terrible.
yeah, it does, but like it's kind of how it was. It's kind of like you just like don't
Well,
worry, and like you,
Yeah.
it's like, oh
Just
yeah,
move on. You're fine.
yeah, right. Like you just don't be so dramatic. It's like that's not what
well,
this is.
in so yeah, in the beginning of our marriage too, and you have to know this about Bryan, is like he's also a hypochondriac about like getting sick and things being wrong with him.
That is true, though.
So I'm usually the voice of like, okay, no, you're okay. Like, but then when it became like a legitimate panic attack, like there was a few nights that they weren't, the intense ones didn't happen a ton.
Mm-mm.
Um,
No, not a lot. Yeah.
but there was a few nights where I woke up to him like sitting in front of the fan, just like on the bedroom floor,
Like
like
this close, like the fan
trying
would
to
be like
cool himself
literally.
off and freaking out and basically breathing really hard. And so, and I just was like, what? And I didn't really know what to do. And I just remember being like praying in my, like, I was asleep basically, but praying. And I remember that one night that, in Virginia Beach that, like, I think I like sang over you or something
Yeah.
because it was, and I was getting better at dealing with it at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say kind of all of this is like us remembering things as we're thinking back to. But I don't know if there was unhealthy coping mechanisms necessarily, but one thing that really messed us up, and I would say almost led to, like, I mean, it helped lead to the worst season of our marriage, and if not, could have gotten worse. Was when we were in the midst of, like, kind of spiritually abusive situation. We had a pastor that we had, really trusted and were very, like, vulnerable with, and so he had counseled, like, both of us one-on-one separately, and we didn't realize until after we left the church that, like, he was really driving a wedge between us of he would meet with Bryon and, like, tell him things about me and that weren't true or weren't even issues that we struggled with,
Right.
like she doesn't respect you as a leader and she doesn't trust you and all these things. And so there was all these things that was, like, driving a wedge between us, and I remember we just felt distant. We didn't feel like we were united in that season, and I didn't know that was going on, and I just remember feeling like he would come home from these meetings and start having issues and, yelling about things that I'm like, we haven't even thought about that. Like, that's not a thing that we even talk about.
Mm.
But it almost created a problem that wasn't there and kind of stirred up distrust between us. And so that was one thing that once that was broken, as far as, like, once the truth was out of, we saw clearly what had been going on, it was a really huge, like, uniter, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what even kind of what brought that out, like for me, was I went to see a third party counselor outside of it, and she was actually the one that, like, I'd never heard the word spiritual abuse or anything like that.
Yeah,
Like whatever, like
we
that
didn't
was,
know.
I didn't know what
Yeah.
that meant, didn't know what that was, and she was like, "Well, sounds to me like you're, being spiritually abused by a manipulative leader." And I was like, "Well, I don't know what that means." And then she kind of like told me, and all of a sudden, like, she kind of started going through, like, she's like, "Well, you said this a minute ago." I can't remember what it was. She's like, "You said this a minute ago. Like, what do you mean by that?" And I told her, and she was like, "Well, yeah." And this is like the first session of the counseling for a lady I'd never met in my life.
She got it done.
Completely outside of the bubble. Knew nothing about, didn't know the church we were at, like, didn't know anybody over there. But I mean, in the first session, she sits me down. She goes, "Well," she goes, "I can tell you what's creating a wedge in your marriage." And she told me, she's like, "Well, it's this pastor." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So she started explaining how, and like what spiritual abuse was, how things were twisted, how things were said that shouldn't have been said, blah blah, all this stuff, like, and getting in between us and stuff. And then and basically, she was like, "Well, you're gonna have to leave that church." She told me, like, "You're gonna leave the church," and I was like, "Well," I was like, we've never left a church. So, like, we're not gonna do that.
We don't
And like, we're not doing that.
church
And we're like, we're not gonna do that. And she was like, "No, like, you're gonna have to leave this church. Like, you're not gonna be able to move on there." And I was like, well, listen, like we've known this guy for forever, blah, 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 like whatever. And she was like, she goes, "Look," she's like, "Okay." She's like, "It's gonna come down to this." She's like, "You have two options here. You can either leave that church or your marriage will eventually fail."
Mm.
She's like, "So the decision is totally yours."
I know.
Mm.
And
Wow.
so she left it at that. And at the moment, I was like, it's all kind of just like started
Yeah.
clicking for me, and I started seeing things that, like, we had been like talking about for the past like few months, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I was like,
Yeah.
she was
But we didn't
right.
trust
Like,
ourselves, and
yeah, like, didn't trust ourselves.
we
Yeah.
thought we were creating problems and we didn't want to, be in the wrong.
Yeah, like, we weren't trying to be trouble, like, like
Um,
troublemakers, or trying to like rock a boat or anything like that.
But I
We're trying to
remember,
be-
yeah, I remember him coming home from that appointment being like, "Thank you, God." Like, he just, like, sat down and, like, poured it all out.
Oh,
Like, I feel like that counselor just had this supernatural, like, ability to see all of this and call it out. Because, in a first session, like, you're just, like, getting to know
Right.
people. Like,
And now she cut straight to
and also it
chase.
was a strange situation. Remember, like
Oh
the
yeah.
counselor, it wasn't even like, oh, this is somewhere I want to go.
Yeah, it wasn't even like
It was like someone interrupted their session. Like
her assistant like came in the middle of our session, was like, "Oh, sorry, I got to get these papers and stuff," and like started talking to her, like to the counselor. I'm like mid session
it was like
and
this
stuff,
odd
and they're like,
thing.
"Yeah, yeah, okay, cool, well, yeah, go get this and all right, come back and do it." And I was like, "God, what's going on?"
And then like God made it really productive. So
Yeah.
it was really great.
Wow.
But I just remember feeling like, wow, I knew there was something. There was something in between us. There was something like keeping us from like just feeling that like intimacy and that connection of like we're on the same team.
Yeah.
And you didn't even really realize it until
Oh yeah,
until that day.
exactly. I told them,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, "Okay, this is
Yeah. And
why."
so back on the transition, like that sparked a new transition for us.
Yeah.
And we still fought it for months. We still tried to like, well, there's going to be this new campus or something. Maybe we'll go there, or maybe we'll just disappear for a few weeks and we'll just see if things die down.
Still tried to stick it out, even though she gave us like, "This is your two options."
Yes.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, you're probably right." We still tried to like,
Because we both, Bryon really is conflict avoidant, but I also don't like it. So, I mean, we both really don't like to burn bridges. We want every relationship to be restored. Like, I don't know. And unfortunately, that relationship just wasn't. And
yeah,
so there was a transition there of like, that's the one where we kind of lost a lot of our community pretty quickly. And we're kind of like ostracized from that area and that community that we had really built intentionally. And so we kind of like hit the start over button, even in Virginia Beach
yeah, we had to restart
again.
all over a second time, basically.
And
Wow.
yeah, and went to another church and rebuilt community and got involved there. And every time we've always been like, we're not doing this again. We're not getting on. And well, you get hurt or you get burned and you're like, we're just gonna be here for a while. We're not gonna serve. We're not gonna join staff, and immediately we're really a part of it because that's our heart. At the end of the day, God stirs our heart in these directions. And I still really believe like there's purpose in everything. Like we I don't know if you guys, I mean, I think last year we put out an EP of a couple songs that we wrote
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
recorded, and we named it No Wasted Years because it's really like kind of about our time in Virginia Beach, of like all the different songs were related to certain seasons and kind of the whole thing. And really that I feel like God just dropped that in my spirit of like, no years are wasted. And it does. That was the temptation to believe when we moved back. We were like, this feels kind of like failure. It feels like it didn't go the way we wanted it to. We would have loved to like move and go, wow, this is clearly God's path. This is blessed. This is where we're
Yeah.
going to spend the rest of our life. We're going to have lifelong friendships. We're going to do, all this stuff with these people forever. And it just wasn't that. And it doesn't mean that just because it was a season doesn't mean it wasn't purposeful and it wasn't fruitful. I think that he really did work in a lot of the relationships we made. And so, yeah, all those.
That's good. Yeah, I was thinking that too, that like coming back, did it feel like failure? And it sounds like that was something that you were definitely feeling and thinking. And it was like you have to listen to God and not the devil, and
Yeah.
know that it was not a failure. It's just that that chapter is closed
Yeah.
and God wants to do a new thing. And here
Yeah.
you are, doing these new things.
Yeah.
And I love that you wrote songs about that really dry spell that you had there, because I mean, that's just God just moving through you, and he's going to use those songs to touch other people's lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, if he had you there just so that you could write some music that could help other people, makes it worth it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's people that are in our lives now that are there because of that whole season. And so I just know, God leads you to certain people and certain relationships, and also the experiences we had there. Like Bryan's a little bit not this way as much as I am, but I'm very much like, man, I wouldn't trade that season for the world. Even all the hurt, even all of the pain. Because I can see it grew us so much. Like I'm telling you, we were so naive.
Yeah.
Like, and so And I guess there's some there's some days where we're like ignorance was bliss, like not knowing.
Isn't it though?
Yeah, but at the same time, I personally wouldn't trade it because I do feel like God gave me a calling through all of it to really have a heart to see people who have been wounded by, like,
Yeah.
I don't even want to say just the church, but just like really spiritual leaders who have used their authority in a not
Mhm.
God honoring way, and or people who have just been used and abused, um and so I think it taught us how to be, well, it taught us what not to do. And it taught us to really care for people first. And yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have learned all of those things. And we wouldn't have learned the need for boundaries. We didn't have any
Yeah, that's
boundaries.
true. Yeah, we didn't have any at all. We didn't.
We were just
True.
like, yeah, anything you need, anything, anytime, we're here.
We'll drop everything we're doing. Like, I'm like, I don't really care about my full-time job. I'll literally just, like forget money and just do this.
And we
Like,
did.
and we did that. We shot ourselves in the foot, like financially quite a few times because of that.
Wow.
But
Mm.
because like I think so long, like, and I think a lot of us have had this where it's like we've chased the calling, the quote unquote calling, like we thought the calling was a title or a position, or like we are what we thought the calling was going to be, when in reality, like our realizing that, like, just because you feel called to lead worship doesn't mean you were called to be full-time staff on a church, like, kind of thing. And like,
And also,
Yeah.
forever. Like,
Yeah,
things
right.
are seasonal. Things like it looks different in different assignments, and the method of your calling might look different in different seasons, but it doesn't change the main thing, which is glorifying God and loving
Mhm.
people. And so,
Yeah, and then but like, yeah, for her, she looks back and she was like, "Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything." And I'm like, "Yeah, I never would have moved to Virginia Beach had I known." And I'm but I'm like,
yeah,
but also at the same time, that's what I was like. But now I'm like, no, absolutely. Like, we have I mean, again, like, we still have a ton of friends that are there, and like some of like my really good friends are there and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, obviously, like, it was definitely worth it. But for a long time, I'd be like, yeah, I just would rather have never. That was just a waste of 5 years, or something of our life, and I never would have moved had I known
Yeah.
that was going to be the case. Like, I wish I could just go back and not move, like, kind of thing.
Right.
the time when we finally moved back to Richmond, we it was so funny the way that we had kind of flipped-flop, because my first few years out there, I was like, I could move home at any time. I miss my family, I miss everybody. And then it was like after we lost everything, and like the second time rebuilding, and kind of, I feel like I finally like dug some roots and kind of felt more settled in Virginia Beach. And so I wasn't really like itching to get back home. And he was like, I'm done with this place.
Yeah,
And
this
so,
place sucks,
and so,
Let's go.
and so God did give us a piece of like moving forward and, selling our house and moving here. But at the time, that's what it was. When we came back, I was like, it's just funny. I remember sobbing my eyes out, crying the whole way moving to Virginia Beach, and then sobbing my eyes out, crying the whole way moving back home 5 years later. And I am a crier, but like it was literally like a grieving both times. And so,
Yeah.
and not just because I miss the ocean and I love the ocean, but partly.
Well, yeah, yeah. And then
Yeah.
the house is a whole ordeal too. Well, selling the house was easy.
Selling the house was easy.
Oh, I know. We haven't even gotten into that.
I'm sure we even got it, but yeah, that was cake. So it was
Hey.
the next part that wasn't.
Yeah,
wasn't,
we thought the next part was gonna be cake too.
but
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I mean, and I would imagine the emotions of the tears that you had maybe were a little bit different. There was probably a little bit of anger, I'm assuming, probably moving back. Maybe there was anger moving there, moving away from what you knew here too. I don't know, but
Yeah, I think moving away from here, it was more just fear. It was like,
yeah.
Yeah.
it was funny. I mean, Heather, you were on the worship team with me back then before we moved.
Yeah.
And I would always sing Oceans. They always had me sing
Yes.
Oceans. And so it's literally Oceans, and Spirit lead me where your trust is without borders. And I remember being like, I sang Oceans too many times. They moved to the beach. Like,
Now he's leading you out there.
yeah.
Careful what you sing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may come true.
Yeah, it made so that on that end of that transition, it was fear for me. It was fear of the unknown. and it was like stepping out. Like my family is a huge like protected, like it's my comfort zone. Like they're my dad, you know, having him nearby, I'm like, I feel protected. I feel like my dad's down the street, you know. And so, and at that point I think what was I 2 days before turning 25 is when we moved. I moved.
Yeah.
So I was like
Mm.
24, and
Yeah.
anyway, so I just was like scared. And then on the way back, I was like, man, what are we coming back to? Because everyone's life is different. Like
Yeah.
everyone's life is 4.5 years different, 5 years different than it was before. People have 3 to 4 kids they didn't have before. They have, you know, there's a lot of people that
Yeah.
weren't around that were our close people back, you know, before we left.
Yeah. So we
And
couldn't like we didn't just get to pick back up where we left off.
No.
So it's like
And I-
you know, which was a weird thing because like you kind of think like, yeah, well, we'll just
moving home.
moving home, we'll kind of pick back up with our friends,
Yeah.
and like we did, but again, it was just obviously very
But it's
different.
different. Right.
Exactly.
It's
Again,
it's
because
like
of the 5 year difference of a season is like, yeah. So obviously, again, they have kids, so like they can't just
Yeah.
everything and come and
Mhm.
hang out all the time like we did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So
right.
so we got back in for a while. It's just like, why did we move back?
Yeah, we were
We almost were like,
Right.
did we
questioning
like we're like,
everything.
or maybe we made the wrong decision.
Right.
Mm.
Also,
Because where do you fit in? You like you leave
Right,
your life,
exactly.
you fit before you leave. When you come back in your, it's like somehow in your subconscious, it's like nothing's changed. It's going to be just like it was before.
Yeah.
You come back, where do you fit? How do those puzzle pieces fit together with your friends and family when everything is different? So yeah, it's like it's another start over for y'all. So you started over twice in Virginia Beach, you come back here, you're starting all over again, essentially.
Yeah, and there's nothing like moving to a brand new place and being like, we literally have nothing scheduled for the next year. Like I have nothing on the schedule. Where we came from, every night of the week there was
There was
something going
something.
on, or
Yeah.
you know, we were lucky if we had a free Saturday or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then you come to this place and you're like,
You just have
I'm
nothing happening.
we're about to be 30, or you were already
I was
30.
30, yeah.
I think you were
Wait,
31.
30.
No, you turned 31.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was 30, I was 29 when we moved back, and we moved in with my parents.
Yes.
And I
Mm.
fought that for months before. I was like, I was looking everywhere, like, anyone have, I didn't want to do an apartment because we had a dog and we were used to a fenced in yard and all that. But I was looking at everything, like rentals and anybody know of anything, blah, blah, blah. But also we moved back with him getting a job, but I didn't have a job yet in Richmond. So it was, we were limited budget wise too. And so I remember for months, and my mom kept being like, Alicia, what are you gonna do? You can stay with us. And I was like, yeah. No, I'm not gonna do that. And and then finally it was probably like December, like
Yeah.
we were moving in
February.
and it was probably like no, it was after Christmas. It was January, I think.
Yeah, I think it was
That
like
finally I was
month
like,
out.
okay, fine. Like, we'll move in with you, but we're gonna be house hunting immediately, and it's probably just gonna be like 2 months. So
Like 2 months max, you know, like we're meeting
Yeah.
house hunting,
so
find it, hopefully a 30-day close,
Yeah,
get
so-
it done.
Right.
move in with
Smooth
you.
and easy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we'll put all of our stuff in storage. So we have the storage unit, and
Yeah.
then we have them, and and it did not work that way. It was 7 months.
2 months turned into 7 months.
And the whole time we were trying to buy a house, and as everyone listening knows, I'm sure, is
Yeah.
the market has been absolutely insane since 2021, and that's when we were trying.
Yeah, we sold right at the jump. So we sold,
Yeah, we
you
thought
know,
we were selling it when it was high. It was just
it
beginning.
was just beginning to go up. And like we got, you know, we got over what we asked for.
Oh yeah,
Like,
house
you know,
sold
house sold in a
2
day.
days, one day.
It was one day. It was sold in one day. And like, I mean, because like we posted, I remember like posting like the show times, and within like an hour we had like 11 showings booked.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and all of a sudden we
Wow.
then like at the end of the day we had like multiple offers above asking price and stuff. So we're like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Piece
And
of
so-
cake.
Yeah, right. Sweet. Cool. You know, this is it's the first step of the smoothness. Here we go. This is great.
Yeah.
And then we did that and we sold, and it was easy. And then we got here, and then
Yeah, so
we
we-
turned
we-
around, and it was not easy.
We moved back a little jaded about people, but still really naive about real estate. So
That's definitely true.
we did not know what we were getting ourselves
Absolutely
into. So,
not.
but you know, in hindsight, basically what was a blessing is the first few months that we were with my parents, my sister had moved back home too. And so we all got to be under the same roof again,
Oh,
about to get married. And so she was like, well, she had moved home over COVID, and she's about to get married. So she's like, well, I'll just wait until we get married and move out. And so I got to be there like through all the planning and the bridal showers and all the things. So that part was really fun. And it was like, we obviously, that's, you don't get to live under the same roof as your sister again. So that was fun. But it was also insane.
right, because you're all adults now. It's not
Yeah.
like you're teenagers or children living there with your parents. You are all adults. And then
Yeah.
here's Bryon coming in. It's like, wait, he's like, what? It's
Brian's
just
like, why?
weird. I moved home as an adult as well. So
Yeah.
I know how, yeah, that can be tricky to navigate.
And as the daughter that moved back in with her parents, it's like you immediately become 15 again in their eyes. And
Yes.
they will protest this if they listen, which they probably will.
I probably will.
But it was like, hey, when are you going to be home? Hey, what are your plans for tonight? Are you coming over dinner? Do I need to make you dinner?
Are you making dinner tonight?
Are you
for the
making us
family?
dinner? Are you? Yeah, exactly. And I was like, okay, I'm used to being not only on our own, but on our own in a different city, 2.5 hours away. And like we became so much more independent just by doing that.
And didn't realize it, I think, until that moment.
And yeah. So anyway, finally at 7 months, which the reason it went that long is because we had a false hope of this house we were under contract with that kept getting pushed back. And we were under contract for 105 days, I think. And it's still like the date kept getting pushed back.
Yep.
All of the crazy stories that you could even think of. And finally we were like, all right, we're walking away. We're not waiting for this house anymore because this feels like it'll never happen. And we need to get out of my parents' house. And so we just one day, I think within one day, I looked up, found an apartment, got it, and we moved like a few weeks later.
Yep.
But at that point we moved, let's see, we still had to keep the storage unit. We still
So you moved to a one-bedroom
we moved to a
apartment.
1-bedroom apartment
So-
that was
yes.
Moved back from Virginia
that was
Beach.
$300 more than our house mortgage.
Yeah, $300 more a month than our house mortgage in Virginia Beach. We're 10 minutes from the ocean. But that was
3 or 4-bedroom house.
for a 700 square foot apartment.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
And
it was
so
like,
we
okay,
were,
this is weird.
but we were just so excited to be on our own again.
We got our dog back.
Oh yeah, we didn't have our dog at my parents' house. That was the worst. That probably was the worst for our mental health.
Probably.
That was the worst thing. But yeah, and then we were there for 7 months. Then we moved into a rental house. Then we were there for almost a year. And then we finally bought a house.
Finally, we got bought it. Yeah,
Now,
no,
can I ask, through all of this, how were you getting along and everything
Oh,
was going well between the two of you, or?
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so just so no one listening thinks, like, I mean, we fight all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like we're we're very passionate, stubborn people, and we will try and out stubborn each other all day long. But we're always okay
Yeah.
in the sense
Yeah.
we're really, again, like we're really good friends. We're really in this thing, and
Yeah.
we know we're each other's best teammate. And so even if one of us is having a bad day, which happens often because we're human, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
and he's a Sour Patch Kid, so he's a little bit sour and then sweet sometimes.
Very true.
He is self-declared Sour Patch.
Oh yeah, I'd definitely agree.
But no, we were great. I feel like the only like really, really heavy season that we have had was that going through the spiritual abuse, but also like the waves of like we've fought through, like panic attacks and depression, kind of what we mentioned.
Yeah.
But even in those, it wasn't like we're not going to make it. It was
Right.
like we're banding together and we're pushing through this, and we're
Yeah,
fighting
those
it
definitely
together.
were like the hardest. Those were the hardest seasons
Yeah.
because there's definitely a point where I went through. I hit like a pretty bad depression in Virginia Beach, and like to the point where like I would literally like come home, and I literally would
yeah.
I'd literally just be like, "Hey, I'm just gonna go ahead and go to bed," and she'd be like, "It's like 7 p.m." I'm like, "Yeah," but I was like, if I go to bed now, the longer I can escape reality.
Mm.
Like I can go to sleep and I can sleep for like 12 hours. And
Yeah.
so like the longer that I can like not have to be awake and deal with like whatever this is,
Yeah.
Right.
like I would be like, I'd be like, she's like, you can't go to bed till only 7 p.m. I'm like, well, I'm going. Like,
Mm.
so I would do that, and like I would just recluse, like I like, and I was like, usually I was like an extrovert, like I always wanted to go hang out with people, and like I was just like never, like I was just or just recluse, and I was like, no, like I don't want to make any plans, I don't want to do anything at all. Like I just like, and it was like every day, it was like every day for a while,
Mhm.
and
Wow.
that was definitely really tough, and just dealt with like just through the transition of like just the way that things happened out there, like it's a combination of like depression, and then I just like just dealt with like a lot of like anger and stuff like that too, because I was just frustrated, like I felt like I felt like a failure, so I think I was just like upset with
Mm.
that, and then it just like led me to like the depression, just the anger, feeling like just feeling like passed over, and just feel like God just doesn't care. Like God doesn't
Yeah.
care about us, about me, or about what anything we want or our dreams and like that. Like obviously the way things went out here, and then even the way things ended, like at a second place, it wasn't there wasn't like any abuse at the second church, but things just didn't necessarily end phenomenally at the second place either, just in a different way. But um, and then just coming back here, it was just like I was still dealing with some of that,
Yeah.
and just being like man, like I'm just getting to the point where I was just what are we even doing?
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
at time.
For us last year, like I think finally getting a house was a really, really I don't know, relieving thing for both of us. Like I feel like we had felt like talk about transition. I felt like it wasn't that we've had a bunch of little transitions. I feel like we felt like we have been in transition for like the past 4 years.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
we
It's
hadn't
one big one.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
we hadn't felt like rooted and planted in a long time. And we were both really struggling with that, and just it's frustrating to always be talking about the same thing that feels like it's like when is it ever going to happen, like, and then also just move wise, like always planning for the next move is really hard, like like just never getting comfortable where you are. And so for us a few days ago,
Yeah. Yeah.
we closed on this house, and so having the last year of just being here. It's not even really about the house. Like we don't have this crazy amazing story where we got our dream house. We we got a house that we like, and it's been more of a blessing than we expected it to be. And so we saw God come through in that way. But it just something about like it gave us a place to like land,
Yeah.
you know. So we
Yeah.
haven't actively been in transition for
Mm.
the past year. So that's been nice.
It's just been nice to
That's
be
good.
not to have a date coming. We're like, okay, are we going to renew a lease? Are we going to have to like find somewhere else to go again?
There's cardboard
Move
boxes being
again?
reused and
Like
reused and reused.
Right.
it was just
And you
like that
can rest now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you're
there
just
is
you're
a
just
rest in
resting.
it.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It was like that for like 5 years almost. So it was
Yeah.
just like
Yeah. That is
what
a
like
lot. That's a
4 years.
lot.
I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. There is a rest in it and a peace in it. And I keep saying, I've told him multiple times that like this year of our marriage has been my favorite one yet.
Oh,
And it just is. I don't know. It's like it's not like I don't know. It just feels like maybe it is that rest. Like it just feels like
yeah.
that like we're settling in. I keep saying like we feel like we've learned how to be on each other's team
Yeah.
more.
Mm.
And
Good.
yeah.
I like that, like, with everything that you've shared, like, you've told kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly, like all of it. But I feel like there's just this overarching theme of how the two of you stuck together through all of it. And I think that's so important for our listeners because this stuff can tear you apart. Like,
Yeah.
it
Oh, yeah.
tried. You said there was a wedge between you that was, kind of being put there by people in your life. And, just like trying to support each other through depression or panic attacks or this change or that change. Like I feel like it's so normal these days for couples to say, I'm out. Like I'm tired of all this. I'm done with this, whether it's a relationship or the job or where you're living, like whatever. And it's like Satan is just cheering when they're splitting up, and he couldn't do that to y'all,
Yeah.
and you're sitting here saying that you stuck together and you relied on God through all of this. You wrote songs about all of this, and just let God just unite you, I think, closer together through everything. And you learned how to support each other through it, whether it's an emotional thing or something with your friendships and relationships and stuff. And you're best friends through it all. And I think that's just something that our listeners need to hear, that, I wish more people would see that that through these trials of life, like, don't let it rip you apart as a team.
Yeah.
Stay on each other's teams. I think
Right.
that's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, that's huge. And like, I mean, and obviously we didn't even talk about all of the things, and not to get into all the things, but like, I think 2019 is probably when we first have started trying to have kids too.
Yeah.
And so like through all of that, it's been like trying for that and trying to figure out health things and all kinds of things. But again, I feel like obviously God is the center of everything, and like that's
Yeah.
the reason, and that's the foundation, that's the solid rock that we stand on. And so even though life shifts and there's disappointments and all of that will come, but he's the same every day. And so
Yeah.
like just consistently coming back to that foundation has been obviously incredible. And then on the practical side of things, I think that us specifically, I can't speak for every person who has ended up with their high school sweetheart, but for us, it's like, well, we have so much history and we have so much friendship with each other that like, why would we push each other away? Who else would we go to? Like, it's literally like, right? Like even on like
This is it.
even on the days where, I mean, he pisses me off more than anyone in the entire world. Like he's
Right.
still my absolute best friend. You're still the one I want to come home to.
Right.
So it's worth pushing through. It's worth working through.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Good.
amazing.
That's really good. I don't know, as I was listening to all of this, I was reminded of the movie Castaway. Have you all seen the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks?
Yep.
He's got, I think, was he a FedEx pilot? He had a job. He knew where he was going. That's probably what you felt like at some point.
Yeah.
But then obviously the plane crashed and he ended
Yeah.
up on a deserted island by himself.
Yep.
And he was battling all kinds of stuff, internal demons, external demons. And then at some point, I think I'm trying to remember the end. I typically fall asleep on this movie before it ends, but he gets back to civilization. And was his wife remarried, or
I think so.
it was like,
Life had moved on without him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
And like,
Life had-
I remember there's like, I remember a scene from that at the very end where he's like, because like they thought he was dead, so they had a funeral for him and stuff like
that's
that.
right.
So like they were having like this like kind of like welcome back or whatever kind of thing for him. I remember like he like had a hard time like interacting with people
Yeah.
because like he had been
Right.
alive so long, like he didn't know like how like he wasn't like he didn't know like how to talk to people very well. So it's like this
Right.
awkward like quiet dude.
Right. And that may have been a little bit about how you felt coming back, for sure.
Yeah.
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 And I think with that, we probably will work on wrapping up. I think we need to do like a 5-part mini series with Bryon and Alisha, because there's so many other things I know we really didn't
Yeah.
dig down too deeply
Yeah.
on, but this has been fantastic. And we really appreciate the time. And, I think again, the message seems to be that, there's a foundation, there's a rock in God and Jesus and each other. And if we cling to those things, then it's not always going to make it completely easy on us, but it'll make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
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 There's
Is there
always
any-
purpose in it. There's
Yeah.
purpose in
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Purpose in the pain.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
Well, thank you two so much for joining us. And thank you for listening to this episode. And with that, we will go ahead and close out, and we will talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.